Our next speaker is Mr. Howard Miller. He's going to be speaking on American greatness. Howard Miller graduated from Atlanta Law School with a Juris Doctorate degree. He has over 35 years in the banking industry. Howard and his bride Hannah owned an independent insurance agency as well as an accounting company. He is currently the CEO of the accounting companies as well as president of Mountain Lakes Resort and general manager of IGLS Resort, or Eagles, in Helen. He serves as treasurer of the White County Republican Party, Community Helping Hands Clinic, Cleveland, and Sharing and Caring of Habersham County.
I decided I wasn't going to get a whole lot of facts and figures. I was blessed to be born in 47. Daddy had come back from the war. He was in the Army and the Corps of Engineers. He was a major in the Philippines. I remember John Kennedy coming on a train to Marietta. And he came out on the back of the train. And we had people down there on the railroad tracks, which today converts to a Donald Trump with hundreds of thousands of people. I was at Georgia Military Academy. I was blessed to be able to go to military high school for 5 years. And I remember I was in biology class on a Friday afternoon. When we came over, we were put on alert and all of our leaves were canceled because the president had been shot in Dallas, Texas. And it was such a shock, much like the way I felt on 9/11, you know. But our country, if you look at our forefathers, and they had to fight England, and then we actually had a war between the states. And then we have protected the world. In World War I, World War II, we went to protect Korea, Vietnam. We went over to the Middle East all the time. I mean, if you look at our nation, we have led the world. And I did get something that I thought might be good to read tonight. And this sounds like the United States. From bondage to spiritual faith. From spiritual faith to great courage. From courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance. From abundance to complacency. From complacency to apathy. That's where we were on November 2016. What's next, if we're not careful, is apathy to dependence and dependence back to bondage.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from anyone? Okay, we do have a couple of online questions. How can you support such a racist president?
We didn't. We replaced him with Donald Trump. Look, the people that say Donald Trump is racist, I cannot understand where they're coming from. The man wants to build a wall to protect American sovereignty. Since when is it wrong for a president to protect sovereignty? And building the wall won't cut off immigration. It's not going to stop immigration. It'll stop illegal immigration. Nobody wants to stop immigration. We want to stop people coming here illegally, and there's a difference. Donald Trump went after the Squad, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, and Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. And people said he was racist for that because he went after four congresswomen of color. Donald Trump didn't go after the 4 women because of their skin color. Donald Trump went after the 4 women because they're anti-Semitic, anti-American, racists who are serving in Congress. And 2 of them are idiots.
No, they're all for it.
No, one of them knows what she's doing. Tell you, she's pure evil.
The problem with saying Donald Trump is racist is it's an uneducated argument. It's looking at the surface of things, and even then, it's skewing that very limited window. It's not based on fact, it's based on emotion, based on opinion, based on jumping on a bandwagon, following a celebrity or a politician. It's not understanding the situations for what they are.
Well, I think you have to understand that this is part of what Nikita Khrushchev laid out when Kennedy was our president, about how he was going to take over America. A nation divided cannot stand. That's what they're doing with the race card. They're keeping the country split. They've gotten control of our schools. Now they've split our churches. They're keeping the people divided. And that's the way the communists take over a country. And the thing that is a blessing is, as I travel in the Southeast for the Trump campaign, I meet with a lot of my brothers and sisters that are black, that are Hispanic, that are working for the campaign. But they cannot discuss it. It's sort of like the Methodists used to have to do in England. They had to get in basements. They had to hide from the people. Well, that's what the people that have the same jobs I do up in this district, in this congressional district for the campaign, they have to meet in secret. But I'm going to tell you, and you heard it here first, the night of the election in 2020, this nation is going to put Donald Trump back in. And it's only because he believes in America and he is fighting for America every day of his life. And his family is being put through tremendous risk fighting for our country. But the people out here are going to take it to the voting box in 2020.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller.
And the base is getting energized. Habersham County, where I live, gave Trump 80% of the vote. That's pretty good.
I had 17 counties in 2016 that I had. 2 were 73%, and all the rest were in the middle 80s.
But last year, when Kemp was on the ballot, we gave him 83%. Why? Because I talked to a lot of people, and they're angry about the lies about Trump. And they're turning out. When I went to vote in 2016, I didn't have a big line. When I went to vote in 2018, there was a line. We had to wait a few minutes, but we had to wait. So
there's no legitimate reason for calling Trump a racist if they go by the true meaning of racist. Trump was raised in probably the most diverse county in the country. Queens, New York is the melting pot of New York City. It's blue collar area. They've got every ethnicity in the world that live and work there. I cannot believe that that Trump was not influenced by his surroundings. Just as I was raised in a racist society in Reedfield, Georgia, it influenced me until I saw the injustices after I got out from there, went into the military and was exposed to other races, and they were treated equal. That's a red herring for the left to label him a racist, to denigrate him, and he's gave them fodder for it by, calling the Mexicans or the illegal immigrants rapists, which they are. I mean, he told the truth, but they take those statements he makes and manufacture him into being a racist.
And take him out.
I know him not.
Yes.
Well, I want to say too, that we have to remember they're working the dialectic. And the dialectic is you have a thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And so you create a problem, whether it be environmentalism, the race issue, you create the problem so then you can look like the savior to the problem. Because once you have a problem, then you have a need to change that. And so then you use the human rights, and you have all this legislature coming out. You create, policy in campuses and in policy diversity training in police departments and in corporations. And so this thing is just infiltrating everything. And they remember what I said in the beginning, the UN is one of the 6 main arms is the Economic and Social Council. So everything that is happening on this level is coming right out of the communists that are behind the United Nations, which they're getting their directions from Marx and Engels. And this whole dialectic is also being worked in the gun issue. So you create the problem. Well, now we need, we need legislation. We need to do something about guns. So don't forget that. And there's a video online that has to do with the Long March. I think it's called the Long March. I forget the total name, but it's by 2 men who have put it together, who work with our government. And it's an excellent video on getting into the Hegelian dialectic, the dialectic in general, and Marx, Engels, and a couple of other things. So.
Thank you very much. And do we have time for one more question?
I think so.
Okay. How can you possibly say America was great when our history is filled with moments like the Trail of Tears, slavery, Second World War, and other moments of American evil?
Well, I think, the slavery was in all countries. I'm say supporting slavery, but the country evolved in many different ways. And, we just, and again, this is the other side. They're trying to keep us divided. I remember Martin Luther King. I remember the Selma Bridge. I remember when he was shot in Memphis, Tennessee. But we've come a long way from there. Our country has evolved better each year as we go along. But slavery was not just in the United States. And the thing that irritates me about slavery is at the time of the War of Northern Aggression, 10% of the Southerners owned slaves, but 3% own more than 3. So you don't fight a war over what 10% of your people want. The war was the same thing that they threw the tea in the Boston Harbor. It was over unfair taxation because we were an agricultural community in the South. We depended on shipping, and we shipped our things to who paid the most, which was France and England. And the North kept with tariffs. on it. So, but the country has evolved, and changed over the years for the better. But people are trying to keep us divided over different things that happened in our early history.
I'd like to know what the question could call World War II evil.
Yep, I was
Medieval.
thinking the same thing.
I'm not,
Like,
you know.
was the writer a Nazi, or, I mean,
You know, the American military is the greatest force for good and justice this world has ever known. Now, you're right, we've had some dark marks in our history. Certainly the Trail of Tears is one of them, certainly slavery was, but there were like 300,000 United States soldiers died to rid this country of slavery. There were 400,000 died to rid the world of Nazism and Japanese imperialism. So, I don't know where the questioner is getting that, and I guess they think we're an evil society.
Well, I want to say too, they've been unknowingly indoctrinated, because Charlotte I Servant worked for President Reagan, and she was a whistleblower. In the 80s, she began to see a lot of documents that we had agreements with the USSR, and we were putting our educators in their system and bringing their educators into our system. And you only have one reason to do that, because you're meshing a Soviet Socialist Republic into our system. And so, you know, she began to see these things back in the 60s. Well, this one, 85 was one report. But when you go back, you can actually find them before that. I found one from the 60s. That was a report from the educators actually coming back from the Soviet Union, reporting what they had done. And so when you start to see a lot of these reports post-1985, like change agents in the schools, getting a hold of our mental health programs, there's numerous documents that you can print off the internet that show this indoctrination that has happened into our education system. And so, unfortunately, I grew up in the 60s, born in the 50s, 60s, 70s, went to school, and I didn't think I was indoctrinated until I started really finding out that, about our republic. And I had even been taught that we were a democracy. And so the left has been branding this very nicely for a very long time, so that it is now sticking in our brains. And we have no clue, and we think that all these wars are bad. But again, I go back to what I started with this conversation by saying, how many people are dying to get into this country? How many people are dying to get out? This is huge. So you take the whole mix of all the things that people think are evil about our country, and how many people are dying to get in? It's the greatest country, like you said, Bill. It's a lighthouse. It's a beacon to the entire globe. We never proactively go into war. We reactively go in to help other countries. Go ahead.
I would like to speak for a second directly to this person that asked the question. I hope they're one of the people watching on the video, on the live stream, or hopefully the video later on. I'd like to welcome them to the Republican Party. Now, why do I say that? I'll ask them to use reason and facts. The Trail of Tears was stuck with what party? President belonging to what party? Democrat.
I believe that was the Democrat.
The Confederacy, with all due respect to my friend here, was almost entirely Democrats. After the war, the Ku Klux Klan was started by Democrats. Jim Crow, all of Jim Crow laws were written by Democrats. In 1913 or 14, I forget what year it was, but it was definitely President Woodrow Wilson who welcomed a large march of the Ku Klux Klan down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. Wilson was a Democrat. And then you have a president who came from Texas, who basically said, I'm going to get these, and I'm not going to use the word, voting Democrat for the next 100 years. And that was because he was racist. He didn't think of them much, but he put in some programs that would throw them some pennies, kept them in poverty, basically keeps them in poverty. That was Lyndon Johnson, a Democrat. But who came along, and we saw some of it under Reagan, and we see a lot of it under Trump. Who's brought the black and Hispanic and female unemployment rates to their lowest rates in many decades, if not forever? Trump, a Republican. So I would like to, if I could address this person directly, I would welcome them to the Republican Party.
I think I think this person asks how it is that America was ever great, and she lists slavery, or they list slavery, they list the Trail of Tears. Every nation has moments of darkness in its history. That's a fact. There's not a single civilization on earth that's not stained by something. I mean, even the Israelites, God's chosen people, have darkness in their history. That's why we have the Old Testament in the book of Leviticus. Yes, America has seen some horrific things, like slavery, like the Trail of Tears. But, like Ron Webb said earlier, what nation invented the vaccine for polio? What nation created the world's first interconnected computer network? What nation put a man on the moon? What nation created the radio, the television? What nation created the airplane? What nation has had more technological innovations than the United States of America? And we've only existed for 243 years. We are an infant as a nation. There are countries that are thousands of years old, like Britain, for example. Thousands of years old. The United States is only 243, but humanity has advanced so far in those 243 years because our founding fathers created a government that was of the people, by the people, and for the people, and they set up a constitution that gave every citizen the right to vote, the right to keep and bear arms, the right to have opinions, the right to engage in forums like this. What other country could we engage in a forum like this tonight? The United States is the freest and greatest nation on earth, and we have constantly worked through our difficulties. Okay, slavery was a horrible, horrible practice, but the abolition movement began in the United States just 10 years after our conception as a nation. During the Revolutionary War, black soldiers who fought alongside the Continental Army were given their freedom after the war. What other nation has given former slaves freedom like that? From the very beginning of our nation, we recognized that man was equal. And yes, we had a long way to go. But as this nation has progressed in history, we have become better. We have evolved to truly include all of our fellow men and women as being equal, as having the same rights, the same protections under the law. There are a lot of people today that say that the police, for example, are against black people. But I say to you that that's not the case. The media will use one example, one small example. Now, every life is precious, but if only one person who is carrying a weapon and charging the police, or something like that, that they will use that case, they will twist it around, turn it around into something it's not. And it's intentionally to divide us. The notion that America is not great is intentionally to divide us. This nation is the greatest and the freest on earth.